How disguised is Diana if we can still see her flying? Here's your look at the brand new McFarlane Toys Superpowers Invisible Jet Wonder Woman's Jet. Wonder Woman sometimes employs an invisible jet, one that is undetectable by the naked eye or by most radar systems. This remarkable camouflage effect is achieved by the use of individual tiles that appear purple from the inside. Surprisingly, the Amazon can convert any aircraft to make it invisible using this technology. Being that I can't really see where this jet is, I'm just going to have to kind of guess it when it comes to measuring it. While I'm doing that, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of the Superpowers Wonder Woman's Invisible Jet that we could have a look at this review. I'm only kidding. I can actually see it. It's right in front of me. The vehicle, though, is really small, in fact. It's actually only about 8.5 inches in length. Or it's going to be, in this case, I would say about 23 centimeters long. To put that in proper perspective of just how big this is, the smallest vehicle that we had leading up to this was actually Batman's Batwing. And if you actually look at the two, lining them up, they're actually not that much different in size. You could maybe, if anything, say that the Invisible Jet is just a tad bit longer. But when you're actually looking at the sizing of it, they're actually pretty close in size to one another. Other vehicles we can also bring in as well is the Supermobile, and obviously maybe I'll move the Batwing out of the way. The Supermobile is a lot bigger, and this is almost where I feel like the sizing of the actual Invisible Jet should have been. Closer maybe more to the actual Supermobile, and maybe not as small as the Batwing we got before. And of course, we're going to be looking at the Invisible Jet. I did want to bring in a Wonder Woman for comparison's sake. I'm using for this time around actually the classic looking color Wonder Woman that came part of this wave. To fit the figure inside, it's simple. You're just going to open up the cockpit. We'll kind of get down to all those things in a moment. In the meantime, let's just move Wonder Woman out of the way. Some assembly was required for the Invisible Jet. The wings as well as the back will all be things that you have to install to the vehicle when you first get this out of its cardboard box. You'll be happy to know one thing I always try to think of when I'm putting together vehicles like this for the first time. Let's say that I down the road decide I want to store this away back in the box. Now, obviously, it's not going to be able to go in the box the way you see it right now because now I've since added the wings. I've added the back of this. Would I be able to disassemble this? Well, we're dealing with clear plastics. Right away, that might be a hard thing to kind of consider the idea of now starting to remove these tabs. One thing they smartly did, McFarlane's team, is they actually, when you attach the wings, I'm just going to detach one of them so you guys can see, you're not actually taking the little clip pieces and snapping it in. That's the kind of plastic you would have to then worry about if you ever decide you want to dismantle in this and put it back in the box. Instead, what they did smartly was if you look at the front of it, or at least the side where the wings slide in place, you're literally sliding them in place. You take the larger section of the tab, you fit it into the more larger opening, and then you shift it across. Let me just show you what I mean by that. So you fit it in, and then while it's in place, then you just push your hand back on it, kind of like that, and it snaps the wing then in place. So really, for all intents and purposes, if down the road you decide you want to store this away because it looks better maybe in a box, simply then just slide the wings forward, do the exact same thing then on the other side. And actually the back is the easiest. It really just clips very, very carefully. Well, actually not even carefully. It sits literally into those open grooves on the back. And this actually also serves the purpose of the gimmick that's built into it. So for that, it obviously has to be in a place where you'd be able to push it up and down. So easily, if you remove then all the parts, you could then, for all intents and purposes, fit this back in the box, and then you're good to go. For this, obviously, as we want to see everything that goes on with this, I'm going to put everything back in place the way I found it. Again, we're just going to take the wings, put them in the grooves, push them back just a little bit. That's going to snap them in place. And then this isn't so much going to be snapping in place as it literally is just going to be fitting into those clips. And then it's still removable. I mean, it's very easy, in fact, to detach and remove it. Maybe I may have pushed it down too far. But yeah, you should be able just to remove this. Maybe now I've actually pushed it too far. Maybe what I would even suggest is when it comes time to putting this together for the first time, maybe not push it as far down, because now it looks like I've clearly snapped it in place. So now, yeah, maybe that's not, I may have to even heat that up just a little bit to now remove this. Anyways, though, it does have, of course, the canopy on the front. It's very similar to that of the Supermobile. In this case, though, you actually have yourself a Wonder Woman symbol. It's probably a little harder to see because, of course, the composition of this is all clear plastic. But you push the front of this, and it opens up the canopy. Inside, you'll see there's a steering wheel, and cleverly, they've sculpted the steering wheel to be a Wonder Woman symbol. It doesn't actually turn, so don't try to turn it. You're only going to probably be breaking the peg inside. But then you're going to take yourself your Wonder Woman, just put her more in a seated position, and then there's enough clearance, if I can hopefully show you guys, there's an opening at the bottom of this that you just then take the legs. I actually find it helps to pinch the legs together so that it clears the opening, and then you just slide Wonder Woman in place. You can also bring her arms forward, but she really doesn't have, I mean, if you have her seated as far back as you have it right now, there's real no way that she's going to be actually able to touch and hold onto the steering wheel. So you have to more so just pretend. Anyways, you're just going to close up the canopy. And while clearly you'd be able to see that there's Wonder Woman sitting, it almost looks like she's just sitting in a chair in sky while she's flying around. But she actually sits the figure quite well. Another figure, just in case you're curious as to see like the sizing of it, let's take Flash. I happen to have a Flash here on the ready. You can take also just a regular male figure body, and that also fits inside the canopy too. So it doesn't have to be necessarily specific to Diana, though we all know this is Diana's ride. The other thing I did also want to show you guys is the fact that if you flip this upside down, while it unfortunately doesn't have a landing gear, that's one thing I wish it could have had. It does have, though, a grabbing claw. And the way they've actually sculpted the claw, they've made it flat. So even though it doesn't actually have a landing gear on the front or on the back, because this is flat after all, it sits flat when you put it on the shelf. I mean, I would have liked if it could have actually had a landing gear, but at least it does have this being flat, that it sits flat on the shelf. It doesn't weeble or wobble or anything like that. The claw itself, as you can see, does have a Wonder Woman symbol there to the top. All you do is just remove the clip like this, and then you dangle it down. Now, this does actually open up also as well, so you can't pretend like it's grabbing a bad guy, for example. Do I have a bad guy somewhere in the veil? I got Nightwing. We'll just pretend like Nightwing's a bad guy for right now. You can actually take the clip. Maybe it would be helpful if actually I just move his arms out of the way. You can put this around the waist, and it closes quite shut. It closes all the way around and actually snaps in on itself, so it holds. Now, this would obviously have worked so much better with a bad guy, but just use your imagination for right now. It actually is grabbing onto a bad guy. And let's say down, like, you can also pull the cord. And it kind of gives us what I think almost looks like a lasso of truth. So it's kind of got this on the inside cavity of its body. And then let's say, for example, it grabbed Nightwing. Well, what are we going to do with Nightwing right now? You could fly away while still dragging him from below. But then if you take the button on the top here, which essentially you're just going to be taking the back wing and pushing it down, what it does is it brings the claw towards you. What it ends up doing is it pushes the little button on the back. Now this is all spring loaded. So if you pull the cord all the way down, for example, when you press this, it's going to release the mechanism that then will wind this back up. And I'm going to do this from a distance, so hopefully you guys can see. When you push this down, it brings the claw towards you. Sometimes, though, by just the sheer force of how far it's and how quickly it's pulling this claw back, it sometimes does release whoever's inside the claw. So that's one thing. But I'm glad to see actually they found a way to include a gimmick that doesn't involve you having to wind this manually. You just press the button on the back and it brings the claw towards you. And then easily from there, all you're going to do then is just take the claw. You want to make sure, of course, these are closed back together. And then this just snaps back into the undercarriage of the plane. Very smart the way that they've done that. The only thing about it, though, is it's quite small, especially when, again, we take Wonder Woman. Just going to open up the canopy here, take ourselves the Wonder Woman figure, and fit her legs in there. When you look at the proportions of how big Wonder Woman is compared to the jet that she flies, admittingly, it is on the more smaller side. Again, like when to compare it, it looks really the closest in scale to, like, say, for example, the Batwing. I'm glad to see at least we did get ourselves an invisible jet. As preposterous as the idea may be that Diana's flying around, even in the old cartoons, it was always the case. You couldn't see the invisible jet, or you kind of saw the outline of it, but you'd still be able to see Diana. So it would almost just look like she was sitting down. She could have ideally been sitting down on an invisible flying toilet. But anyways, I do like the idea that we got ourselves an invisible jet. It's a little on, though, granted on the smaller side, but it's a well-constructed jet. It's all clear plastic, of course, and does have the functioning gimmick. Yeah, it's a nice looking toy. I would have preferred still, like, we got ourselves a Batmobile, so that right away makes me happy. But I'm glad as sort of like a secondary, which seems to be the case that we get ourselves like a large vehicle. We even got that with the initial wave, for example. I'm just going to slide that one over. We did get, like, for example, the Supermobile. And because we got the Supermobile as the size it is, it usually then meant we got ourselves then a smaller vehicle, and that was then, of course, the Batwing. Because, of course, this time around, we got ourselves a Batmobile, which we can just bring in here for comparison's sake. Because we got the Batmobile, it then makes logical sense that the Invisible Jet's going to be a little bit smaller in size. We get like the main vehicle, for example, and then the secondary vehicle being slightly smaller. We got the Invisible Jet. I guess that's not a bad thing because we did get an Invisible Jet, and that's all that really matters when it comes to collecting and displaying these on your shelf. Wondering if perhaps I did push the back section of the plane down too far that I wasn't able to remove it. I did put a little pressure against it, and sure enough, I was finally able to remove it. Unfortunately, though, it did leave behind some stress marks in the plastic of the clips. No, so when it comes now to displaying it, I haven't put it all the way in. I have fitted into those grooves, but I haven't pushed it as far down as I did in this review. So at least if I do decide I want to put this back in the box, I can remove it. One thing I would certainly say if you guys decide to pick up this one for yourself is don't put the back of the jet all the way in. Don't force it to the point where it actually snaps in place. Ideally, that's what you want. But unfortunately, though, it means if you ever decide down the road, yeah, you want to disassemble the jet and put it back in the box, you're going to have a real hard time. And if anything, you might unfortunately snap those little tab pieces on the back of it. So don't push it in all the way. The gimmick works still the same way. At least the wings are something that are removable if you ever decide you want to, like I said, break the vehicle down. I like the look of it. It is unfortunately a little on the smaller side, but again, because we got the larger size Batmobile, it had to mean like things like the Invisible Jet had to then place second to it, and it's a little bit smaller and squatter of a jet. It still manages to fit inside a Wonder Woman. Of course, it still has the working winch claw at the bottom of it, and that's one thing I'm glad to see that they incorporated. If you're going to make a vehicle like this, as small as they did, at least include a gimmick that gives a little something extra to it. So you're not just literally buying a shell of a jet that Wonder Woman sits inside of it. I like the winch claw. I think that's a really nice function. And instead of actually having to manually wind it up, as sometimes is the case with these winch claws, you actually have a feature on the back of the jet that you just, again, push down and it winds it up automatically. If that does eventually go on it, though, I don't know how easy it's going to be to kind of disassemble the jet, like take it apart completely in order to get in there. But I'm glad it does actually have a working claw. Something for as a kid or as an older adult like myself, something that you can have a little fun with outside of just displaying the jet on the shelf. Unfortunately, it doesn't also have any landing gears, but because at least the claw is flat on the bottom of the jet, it sort of does make it flat and stable. It's not going to wobble back and forth at all on you. What do you guys think of the Invisible Jet? Let me know down below in the comment section. Could you see yourselves picking this up? And have you been collecting any of these superpowers vehicles, or are you kind of just more keeping to the figures themselves? Let me know what you guys think of the vehicle down below in the comment section. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did come through and provide this sample of the brand new Superpowers Wonder Woman Invisible Jet. Then we can have a look in this review. If you guys enjoyed this video, I hit it with a like. But if you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you do want to stick around for more, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you turn on the bell notification. Making sure, though, while we have wrapped up things right now for Superpowers, there will be a ton of new McFarlane toy reviews coming your way, so make sure you're coming back to this channel on a regular basis. And of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.